I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce the person who's about to talk. Not only is he my business coach, but he's a best friend and someone who has always been there for me, a chief guardian angel. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Brian McMahon, CEO of ExpertDOJO. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Molly. I plead guilty. I love you. What can I say? We have a special relationship. And I'm going to take the next 20 minutes to talk about startup investment in these times. And I'm going to give the context of what qualifies to me to be able to talk about this. But then also, I think what's really interesting right now is that at any other time, this would just be normal, right? It would be, well, let me tell you about investment and where investment is. But because we are in a COVID era, right in the center of it, it is the craziest, freakiest, most strange investor period that we've had in the previous 10 years and probably in the next 10 years, because there's panic in the streets or blood in the water, as my investor partner would say. So let me give you an intro just to start this off so you all know who I am. My name is Brian McMahon. I am, as Molly said, the CEO of ExpertDOJO. ExpertDOJO are an early stage accelerator in Southern California. Now, what that means is we find companies. Now, we find them from all over the world because we're an international early stage accelerator. So we'll bring in companies from Argentina and Indonesia and England and Ireland and Americas, from Latin America all the way through and everything else. And then those companies will come in, and then we will work with them for about 8 weeks. We will give them a check for $100,000. We will take equity in their company, and then we will settle back and say, how can we support them for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years to make sure that those companies are actually successful? And what I'm going to try and do during this talk, I'll try and wrap this up in about 15 or 17 minutes. So in the last 3 minutes or so, you can all ask questions and you can put those questions in. I'll be very, very happy to answer them for you. But as you can hear, the fact that I am the CEO of an early stage accelerator, the fact that we have invested in over 60 companies means I see a heck of a lot of deal flow. I would actually say there is no other investor anywhere in Southern California investing in the rate of deals that we are investing in. Nobody, not a early stage accelerator, not a late stage accelerator, not a VC, and not an angel. So we're going at a very high clip. And what's really interesting is that during this time of COVID, we are investing more. We have increased the amount of investments that we're doing by at least 2 times. And we will have twice as many folks in our cohort this time as previously before. Now, I want to talk about the investment stage that we're in. But before I get there, let me bring you into the world of venture capitalism and how that world works so you can kind of understand that just being a highly scalable venture capital business does not make you a great company. It just means that you've chosen one specific path. So, first path for an entrepreneur, and many of which we saw in the pitches yesterday. You come up with a concept. It has a tremendous problem for which you believe that you have found a solution that will solve that. You do not want to bring in venture capitalists because you know you're going to give away all of your equity between the beginning and the end of that 7-year period. And also because you're giving up a lot of control of your company to other folks that are not partners in the company. They are merely investors. So in this road 1, you are walking down a road where you're saying, I want to build greatness. I will be measured by my fiscal responsibility. I will be measured by my profitability. I will be measured by the impact that my company has within the sector that company is actually working in. And I got to tell you, as a venture capitalist, even though we do not invest in those types of companies, they, for me, are the true heroes. They, for me, are the ones that are building greatness in this world. They're building sustainability. They are not starting a company with a view to exiting the company. And they're doing it with their grit and their hard work and their sweat and their tears. And if you go down that road, the good news is that you will retain ownership of the vast majority of your company, 60, 70, 80, maybe even 100% of your company between now and when you get to a period that company is successful. You also, ironically, have a far lower failure rate than the second road, which is in the venture capital space. Now, what you also have to understand with this first road before you get too comfortable with it is that very few folks are going to invest in you. And very few folks are going to invest because it's difficult for them to be able to see a way that they get their investment back. The way some people will invest, maybe angels will look at a revenue share that you'll have. Maybe they'll look, you can pay them back partially over a period of time. And also family offices and folks that are happy to put money into either family type companies, service type companies, or other companies like that, they'll be fine. For you guys, COVID hasn't really affected you terribly, except for the revenue that's coming in your company. And for those of you with very fixed companies, it's been a tough time, i.e. fixed expenses and a space, maybe a retail space that you work from. It's been a tough time. For those of you who've got technology solutions built in to this particular type of company, you guys may have actually done very well. Okay, second option when it comes to what type of company is a venture backable company. A venture backable company is a company that you specifically say right at the beginning, I am going to launch this company with the pure objective of selling my company or being acquired. I am not launching it for my son, daughter, friends to take over. I am not launching it so I have it forever. I am launching it so as quickly as possible I can get the best price for this company. And that is where venture capitalists come in, of which we are the very early stage of those venture capitalists. And then you would say to someone like us, Brian, here's what we're going to do. I am not going to focus on profit. I am not going to worry about fiscal responsibility. I am going to spend all of my time on growth and scaling. Now, I will make sure that I raise enough money so that I can afford that growth and scaling, because it's probably going to be at the expense of the profits in the company. But that's okay, because I'm a great fundraiser. And I say those words slowly at the end, because if you are not a great fundraiser, you are going to struggle. And then you'll raise what's called a pre-seed raise, or that would be through us as an accelerator. And then the valuation of your company will increase because of the additional revenue that you bring through. And then you get to a seed raise, and then the valuation might increase to 20, 30, $50 million. And then you go for a Series A raise of maybe $3, $5 million. And then so on until you become Uber. And if you notice companies like Uber and Lyft and those types of folks, they have not made money in 10 years. However, they are still unicorns and they have very high valuations. Okay, so there are the two roads that you go down. Now, the second road may seem like the better road because you have a higher probability of building $1 billion company. However, the chances of you achieving that are about 1 to 2 in 1,000. So they're extremely low for you to reach that type of level. And if you look at folks in Lyft or other companies like that, some of them have as little as 1 to 5% left in their company. Okay, so you get it. Now, here's what happened over the last 10 years. The valuations of these companies increased. Angels came into the market. As an angel investor or an early stage investor, we have the opportunity, if we choose well, if the timing is right, if we are lucky, we have the opportunity of getting up to 1,000 times return on our money. Now, that is not the more likely scenario. The more likely scenario is we'll invest in 20 companies. Only 2 or 3 of those companies will make it if we're lucky. And then we will receive a 10, 20, 30 times return on those 1, 2, or 3 companies. But let's say we get a moonshot. Let's say we get a Tesla, we get an Uber, we get an Amazon, we get any of these companies, and we invest early at a $1 to $5 million valuation, then we are getting 1,000 times our money. And the beautiful thing about 1,000 times your money is that imagine if you only put $1,000 down, and we put $100,000 down, but imagine if you only put $1,000 down, that is $1 million. So I always say to investors and startups, look, never ever put money, which is important money to you, on an early stage startup. Always have it as your high risk, high return moonshot. If everything goes great, it will be okay. So for the last 10 years, more and more angel investors have come into the market. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of angels investors in the United States alone. More and more venture capitalists have come into the market. More and more private equity firms have come into the market. Now, a lot of folks will say that it's extremely skewed in fairness between gender, between where you're from, between culture, and I would 100% agree with that. But in generality, the increase in investment every single year has been constant, which means more companies can grow. Here's what happened in the last 2 months. Every single angel investor in the market ran for the hills. Now you got to imagine 100,000 angels running away from every single startup. They all disappeared. The other thing that happened is that venture capitalists said, shoot, I got my portfolio of 20, 30, 50, 100 companies, and some of that portfolio are later stage, which means that they have staff to fire, which means that they have expenses to cut, which means that they need guidance and strategy. I don't have the time. Even if there's opportunity in the market, I have to protect what I have there for me and my company, or we will collapse, not based on what we miss in the future, but based on what we did in the past. Now, you then have the quasi investors, the folks who are not angels, they're super angels, they're extremely experienced in the space, and they're not quite later stage VCs, maybe they're earlier stage VCs as well. Those folks, there's a mismatch. But if you combine everybody together, what we're seeing is as much as 80% of all of the liquidity in the market, all of the dry powder that would normally go to early stage startups has disappeared. Now, let's talk about what that means to startups. And then let's talk about what that means to other investors like us that have taken the opposite road here. So let's start with startups, because this is about you guys first. So I have 60 companies in our portfolio. And our companies in our portfolio are very fortunate because they're quite early. So we invested in them early, and our first investment was only 2 years ago. So we have our first 60 of what will be around 200 companies that we're going to have in our portfolio. But our first one was only 2 years ago. So we don't have high expenses. We don't have high costs. We don't have high overhead. We don't have any of those things. And our startups are exactly the same. So my message to them is, you need to fight now like you've never fought before, because you have an opportunity, not because you should be afraid. It's because you have an opportunity, and you have multiple opportunities all happening at the same time. Opportunity number one, your bigger competitors are crying in their milk. They are terrified. Their VCs have told them to fire their staff, at least a third of their staff. So now they have disloyalty running through the ranks. Their marketing has stopped, which means your marketing is now way easier to do. There's now no interference. There's nobody blocking and tackling, and it's cheaper. What else is happening? You've also got all of your larger competitors are in disarray, which means their partnership relationships are not being maintained as they were previously going to be maintained. So combine that all together. What's the advantage that you have? Well, number one, you're not as reliant on investment as they are because you're bootstrapped, you're early, you're fighters. Number two, you can reach out to everybody because you know where they all are. Nobody's busy in the office anymore. Everybody's at home. Every personality, every partner, every affiliate, every company that you want to help stand on top of their shoulders, they are there for you right now, and they are there waiting to be able to help you drive and get bigger. But if you don't reach out to them, they're not going to know about you. What else? Customers. If ever you are going to work on different pricing models that were going to attract more loyal customers, this is the time. What else? Your team. For the very first time, you have the time to be able to sit back and do what's called scenario planning. And that means weekly planning so you can correct your business going forward. You are no longer reacting to the daily pressures that hit you every single second. I would argue, and I do not include, there are some very poor, unfortunate folks out there who own bars, restaurants, hotels, areas, experiential places. And I feel really sorry for you folks. And this applies, but it doesn't apply with such vigor. Right? You have to pivot. You have to try things, but things are really tough for you guys. But for the majority of the rest of the people, this is the greatest opportunity you will ever have in your life. And it is right now. And us as investors, We're looking to see, who are you? Are you the fair weather friend that fights hard, that does well, that builds a great company when all of your other friends are around you and the sun is shining and you've got a beautiful sea and scenery in the background? Or are you the startup who gets in the trenches and when things get tough, I was going to say the tough get going, but that's actually exactly what I want to say. Are you that one? So I love this time period for me. For me, this is great. For me, this allows me to herd the types of startups that we want into ExpertDOJO, which are beasts, which are people who are afraid of nothing. They're people who say, you know what, this is what I was going to do. I always knew it was going to be hard. I always knew it was going to be difficult. I'm really pleased now that I'm actually here at this difficult moment and I can deal with this now. Now, when we look at investors, folks like us, why are we coming in twice as hard as we were in before? For the same reasons. This is great. The water is clean. It's not muddy anymore. I can now tell which startups have a better chance of success going forward. I can tell which startups are exceptional executors and which startups talk wonderful stories that they're not going to be able to follow through on. I can see how teams work together. I've got marketing at the lowest level it has ever been bat. So combine all of that together and we're in a wonderful place. So where does this leave you? In the last minute or two, and I can jump back into speech at minute 18 if we don't have many questions, but everything you need to focus on right now is scale. If you're a startup and you're thinking to yourself, I need to triple down on reaching out to investors, no, you don't. You need to triple down on scaling and on building your company. And if you're a startup who says, hey, Brian, I can't scale my company because my company is reliant on retail and brick and mortar type aspects, which I can't access right now, I'm sorry. There are areas of your company that you can scale. And like those partners or those affiliates, you can get new customers on, you can send new messages, and I want to see you build your brand. Great brands are what made America. So be a great brand. Everybody right now should be focused on scaling. Fight your way through the recession. You're on the battlefield. The war is at its worst. Do you hide in the trench? Or do you force forward and finish it as quickly as you possibly can? And I want to be around and I want to invest in and I want to encourage entrepreneurs who are going to go force forward on that way. So why don't we do this? It is almost 10:18, which is when I said I was going to do this. I'll open this up for a question or two, Robin, if we want to bring him in.
Hi, Brian. I'm here. And
hey,
I wanted to say, I felt like you were talking to me directly because, as you know, we were going to have this event at ExpertDOJO, your beautiful venue. And 6 weeks ago, I was there going, I think we can. And we didn't know what was coming like the rest of the world. And now we do know. And I had to transition and I could have easily thrown in the towel, right, Brian? I mean, I had enough reason to. And yet here we are.
And you are the biggest beast of them all, Molly, because you pulled this off. You didn't try and squeeze it to 2 days or 1 day. You didn't try and do one webinar. What the heck? You still did your parties in the evening. And I will say, you didn't try and say, well, I'll see if I can make it through and nobody will notice because if I get through, it'll be okay. My sponsors will understand. You created in the startup pitch yesterday some of the greatest group of investors I've seen in one location anywhere, bar none. So you raised your game. And by raising your game, what you will do is you will create your positioning piece for the future. So you see when you come from this, what Molly and AI Showbiz turns into. It's going to be great.
And Yannicka Mickelson. All right, let's take a question, Brian. I could just let you riff all day because I love it. Let's see. I guess the first one is more about, in general, startups. What is the best way for them to reach out to someone like you who has money? What is the best way they can go about it?
So I would rather you rephrase that question to say, what is the best way for you to reach out to someone like me who's a beast and loves other beasts and wants to help startup scale? The fact that I have money or that we have money to invest, I really want every startup listening to this, money's not worth a damn. It's not worth a damn. Money is everywhere. It's been everywhere before. It will be everywhere in the future. Incredible amounts of money have been given to startups who've wasted it, and startups have begun like lynda.com with no money, no help, no anything, and turned into billion-dollar companies. So anyone who wants to reach out to me can do so at brian@expertdojo.com. But just remember this advice: if you call investors for money, most of us will realize that you're needy, and nobody likes a needy person. If you reach out to investors for advice and help and strategy on how you are going to build this great business in the future, then we become greedy. And if you can combine greed and FOMO and the right timing, then you get investment, money, strategy, and everything.
Fantastic. That is so wonderful. I'm so excited about that news. And it's something we can all do, right? And hang on, something's coming in on the chat. All right, so we're out there asking for money. This is a question from multiple people that has come in, Brian, and we're not getting anywhere. We've done as much as we can with our resources. We're hitting a wall. The investors are just not interested. Where do we go from here? Do we give up, or what do we do?
So I believe, and I speak about me when I say this, and through my entire life, which has been a long one, right? Normally, the problem sits with me, but I'm a very enthusiastic and I'm a very optimistic person, and I don't always see that. So I might say, I have a great company. It's going to be fantastic. People should give me money, and they're not giving me money. Like, why is that? And then I look back at it critically, and I can't do this myself. I have learned how to step into the third party and look at the situation, but let's not get too complicated than this. I guarantee you, your wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, son, grandmother already knows the answer. Because if you're not prepared, and I don't mean ask them for money, but if you don't believe that they should give you money today as an investment in your company, then why the hell would a random stranger do? And I will add on top of that by saying that today I would go to my mom and I would say to my mom, you should invest in ExpertDOJO, with an absolute knowledge that she will get a better return than she will get anywhere else. I would not have gone to my mom 3 years ago and asked her to invest in there. So be very honest with yourself about where you are, and be very honest with other people about trying to get the feedback of what you need to do for everybody to feel you're a good value proposition.
Oh, Brian, that's great. Well, one more question. Where do you you're a beast in this industry. You have never given up. You've evolved to take on whatever's necessary. Where do you get your grit, Brian? Where does it come from? How do we get grit if we don't have enough of it or any of it?
So you have enough of it. And actually a lot of entrepreneurs I know, look, we need two things to get through this world, right? The first thing is, none of us are doing this for Ferraris and Maseratis, right? We're doing this because we love it. We're doing it because nobody would hire us. We're doing it because we wouldn't want anybody to hire us. We're doing it because this is the greatest place that we could be. And when we're sitting at some bed at some stage in the future and we got nothing left to give and we're about to go, we'll say, that was awesome, right? And we know that by saying that, we're in the 1%. So just to be clear, that's why we're all on this journey. And anybody who's not on that journey, you got to find yourself something better to do, because you're letting yourself down. But then once you realize you're in that place, then you say, well, I don't want to be a wussy. Like, why would I do this 10%, 20%, 30%? Surely I want to be the very best I can be. And that's where I focus every single day. I don't focus it on money. I never focused it on building it up as an accelerator. I focused it up on learning as much as I can, becoming a student of all of the great people who are around me every single day, and then becoming better every single day. And that pursuit gives you something awesome, which is purpose. So if anybody else has that, you're in a great company, and if you don't have it, then you're going to have a long road.
Brian, thank you so much. I could listen to you all day, but I know there's a lot of people depending on you for things, so we better let you get back at it. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thanks, Molly. You're awesome.